Hey, I hope your holiday season is going smooth because something I came across last night really made me stop and think. Before we dive into that, let me remind you why Alpacino reports hits different. This is not a channel where you just scroll and forget. This is a place made for you, the one who actually pays attention, the one who looks past the noise. Even though thousands might be watching with you right now, they don't matter in this moment, because it's just you and me talking like we're sitting in a quiet corner of New York, sharing a real, unfiltered take. So go ahead, tap that subscribe button. I'm not talking to your buddy who believes every random post on the internet. I'm talking to you because you get the rawness here, the honesty, the breakdowns. Once you join us, you step into a circle that feels personal, even if a whole crowd is standing behind it. Before we get into the mess unfolding in Washington, let me wish you a very Merry Christmas. In the middle of all this chaos, we still need to remember what matters. Family, friends, a little peace on earth. Though I've got to tell you, peace seems to be in short supply these days, especially when Trump's involved. So let's talk about what happened when Donald Trump rolled back into Washington, D.C. recently. You'd think a guy who won the presidency would come back looking like he owns the place, right? Confident, collected, ready to lead. But what did we get instead? We got a guy who looked like he was trying to convince himself more than anybody else that he's still got it. I'm watching this thing unfold and thinking, this isn't confidence. This is desperation wearing a red tie. Here's the thing that gets me. Trump shows up after this rambling speech he gave at some Pennsylvania casino ballroom. A casino ballroom. The symbolism writes itself. Then he comes back to D.C. and you've got these MAGA congressmen acting like he just parted the Red Sea. There's about 2,000 people there going absolutely nuts. But if you really look at it, really watch what's happening, the energy in that room isn't genuine excitement. It's manufactured. It's forced. Like watching people at a surprise party who were told about it 3 hours earlier. They're performing, not celebrating. These Republican congressmen are falling over themselves to praise him. It's like watching grown adults compete in a who can kiss the ring harder contest. There's no dignity in it, no substance. They're not celebrating leadership. They're celebrating the idea of Trump, a symbolic figure they've built up, even while the reality of Trump is standing right there, looking confused half the time. You watch him speak, and it's like watching someone trying to remember where they parked their car while simultaneously explaining quantum physics. The sentences don't connect. The thoughts crash into each other. He loses his own train of thought mid-story. Here's what really gets under my skin about all this. The speech itself was a mess. Strange pauses everywhere, sentences that made no sense, moments where you could see him searching for words, like a guy looking for his keys in the dark. But did his base care? Not one bit. They didn't care because they're not listening to what he says anymore. They're listening to how it makes them feel. And that's dangerous. That's cult behavior, not political engagement. When you stop caring about what someone actually says and only care about the feeling they give you, you've crossed a line from supporter to devotee. Trump isn't leading MAGA anymore. He's dependent on it. He needs them more than they need him now. You can see it in every desperate appearance. Every time he shows up, it's like he's trying to prove he's still relevant, still important, still the guy. But leaders don't have to constantly prove they're leaders. They just lead. When you're spending all your time convincing people you're in charge, you're not in charge. You're auditioning. You're trying out for a part you supposedly already have. Think about that. It's like a quarterback constantly having to remind everyone he's the quarterback. If you're really the quarterback, everyone already knows it.
Let's talk about this FIFA Peace Prize situation because this one takes the cake. You've got Republican congressmen praising Trump for winning some peace prize from FIFA. FIFA, the soccer organization. Except here's the kicker. The prize doesn't exist. It's completely made up, fabricated, fiction. Someone somewhere decided to invent this award, and instead of doing 5 seconds of research, these elected officials just ran with it. Nobody in the MAGA inner circle called it out. Not one person said, "Hey, wait a minute, this doesn't exist." Instead, they all just ran with it like it was gospel truth.
You know what that tells me? It tells me we're living in a time where facts don't matter, as long as the lie serves the purpose of making the leader look good. This isn't an accident. This isn't a mistake. This is deliberate strategy. The lie doesn't have to be sophisticated. It doesn't have to be clever. It just has to serve the narrative. Is the prize fake? Doesn't matter. What matters is repeating it, amplifying it, normalizing it until enough people believe it that the truth becomes irrelevant. This isn't just flattery anymore. This is the complete breakdown of accountability. When elected officials start promoting obvious falsehoods as strategy, we've got a serious problem. These aren't people who accidentally believe something wrong. These are people who know it's wrong and repeat it anyway, because the cost of telling the truth is too high. If they contradict Trump, they get attacked, they lose their base, they get called rhinos, and they get primaried by someone more loyal, more willing to bend the knee, more willing to say whatever needs to be said to stay in Trump's good graces. So lying becomes easier than honesty, and that's how democracies start to crumble, one convenient lie at a time. You start accepting the small lies, and before you know it, you're accepting the big ones. You're accepting that facts are negotiable, that truth is whatever serves your side, that reality itself can be rewritten if enough people agree to pretend. But here's the second part that bothers me. Some of these guys aren't doing it out of fear. They're doing it out of opportunism. They figure if they praise Trump loud enough, absurd enough, creative enough, maybe he'll notice them. Maybe they'll get a cabinet position. Maybe they'll get an endorsement. Maybe they'll get invited to Mar-a-Lago for dinner. It's like watching kids compete for attention by seeing who can tell the biggest lie. And the more outrageous the flattery, the more likely Trump is to pay attention. It's a perverse incentive system that turns governance into performance art. The fake FIFA prize is just a symptom of something much bigger. It shows how vulnerable we've become to manufactured myths. If the movement is willing to invent awards, what else are they willing to invent? Victories, crises, enemies. That's the slippery slope we're on. You start accepting one lie, and before you know it, you're accepting all of them. Truth becomes negotiable. And when truth becomes negotiable in politics, you don't have democracy. You've got theater. You've got professional wrestling with nuclear codes. Here's what really bothers me about this whole thing. It works. Inside the MAGA bubble, the FIFA prize became real because enough people repeated it. That's the scary part. The prize doesn't have to exist in reality. It just has to exist in the echo chamber. And once it's in the echo chamber, it gets repeated and amplified until it becomes truth and gets accepted within that community. This is exactly how propaganda works, how authoritarian movements maintain control. They don't need to convince everyone, they just need to convince their base. And they do that by creating an alternative reality where facts are whatever the leader says they are. Now let's talk about something that really got people fired up. Trump's comments about African countries. He didn't misspeak. He didn't slip up. He deliberately used derogatory terms to describe entire nations, calling them shithole countries and suggesting America should favor immigrants from places like Norway and Sweden instead. You don't have to be a political scientist to understand what's happening here. This is a dog whistle so loud it's practically a foghorn. He's signaling to the most extreme wing of his base that he's still willing to break every norm of decency, still willing to say the quiet part out loud. What strikes me most about this is the brazenness. Trump knows these statements cause racial tension. He knows they divide the country. He knows they're recorded, analyzed, condemned worldwide. And he says them anyway, because his political survival doesn't depend on appealing to the majority. It depends on energizing the loud minority, the hardcore base that'll stick with him no matter what. This isn't politics of expansion. It's politics of intensification. He's not trying to win new people. He's trying to make the people he's got stay fired up. The crowd cheers not necessarily because they all agree with every word, but because the speech reinforces their sense of tribal belonging. Trump isn't speaking to the country anymore. He's speaking to his club, and membership in that club requires accepting whatever he says without question. It's performative rebellion, calculated radicalization designed to move the window of what's considered acceptable in public discourse. When someone who sat in the Oval Office normalizes racial insults, he gives permission for prejudices that used to be private to go public. He emboldens extremist groups who feel validated by his words. Here's the contradiction that drives me crazy. Trump presents himself as America's defender, the guy who's going to protect the country and make it great again. But by sowing racial hatred, he's weakening the very fabric that holds the nation together. A leader who deliberately divides isn't defending the country. He's setting it on fire and selling tickets to watch it burn. This isn't leadership. This is arson with a podium. You know what else is interesting about this? The timing. Every time Trump faces pressure about his policies, every time questions come up about his administration's competence, every time the economy shows cracks, he pivots to racial attacks. It's a pattern. It's deliberate. Because when the country is arguing about his racist statements, they're not talking about his failed policies. When everyone's focused on the outrageous thing he said, they're not examining what his administration is actually doing. It's a distraction technique. And unfortunately, it works pretty well. Let me tell you something else that's been bothering me. Trump keeps saying prices are falling, that the economy's booming, that everything's great. Meanwhile, I'm talking to people every day who tell me they're working 2 jobs and still can't make ends meet. Wages aren't keeping up with inflation. Purchasing power is shrinking. People are making choices between filling up their gas tank and buying groceries. That's the reality on the ground. But in Trump world, all of this is fake news, media invention, liberal lies. The administration's response hasn't been to address these concerns. It's been to stop releasing economic indicators altogether. You know why? Because when you don't release the numbers, you can tell whatever story you want. No data means no accountability. It means Trump can stand at a podium and declare victory while people are struggling to pay their bills, and there's no official statistics to contradict him. Think about that for a second. If the economy were actually doing well, the government would be shouting those statistics from every rooftop. They'd be bragging about every positive indicator. They'd have charts and graphs and PowerPoint presentations. The fact that they've gone silent tells you everything you need to know. The absence of data is a confession. It's like a student who stops showing their report card. You know exactly what that means. They're failing, and they don't want anyone to see the proof. But here's where it gets really interesting, and this is something that's not getting enough attention. Rural America is starting to turn. Now, rural America has been the backbone of Trump's support since 2016. These are the folks who believed he was going to bring back manufacturing jobs, protect American farmers, make life better for working-class communities. But you know what's happening now? Farmers are furious. And I'm not talking about a few disgruntled individuals. I'm talking about agricultural leaders, farm organizations, people who supported Trump initially coming out publicly and saying his policies hurt them. The tariffs Trump imposed devastated entire supply chains. You had farmers who couldn't sell their crops because markets closed. You had billion-dollar bailouts that were supposed to fix the problem, but really just delayed the inevitable. Those bailouts were band-aids on a bullet wound. They didn't stabilize anything. They didn't protect anyone. They just kicked the can down the road. Now rural America is facing something that looks a lot like a farm crisis. Farmers are drowning in debt. Profit margins are razor thin. And for the first time in years, agricultural leaders are publicly saying Trump hurt the very sector he promised to defend. Think about what that means. These are people who wanted to believe in him, who gave him the benefit of the doubt, who supported him through thick and thin, and now they're saying he let them down. That's not a small thing. That's a fundamental shift in the political landscape, and it's showing up at the ballot box. Democrats are winning in rural areas that were considered unreachable just a few years ago. We're seeing special elections flip in districts that Trump won by double digits. That's not a fluke. That's a trend, and trends tell us where things are heading. This erosion of support isn't ideological. It's practical. People vote with their lived reality, not with rhetoric. You can tell someone the economy is great all you want, but if they can't pay their bills, they're not going to believe you. You can wave the flag and talk about making America great again, but if their farm is going under, none of that matters. Reality has a way of cutting through the BS, and right now, reality is hitting a lot of Trump's base hard. It's not just domestic either. Internationally, Trump is losing ground, too. Ukraine openly rejected his attempt to pressure them into territorial concessions. Let that sink in for a second. An American ally, a country that depends on U.S. support, told the American president, no. They said, our sovereignty isn't for sale. You know what that tells the rest of the world? It tells them America doesn't inspire trust anymore. It tells them the U.S. is unreliable, that we'll abandon our allies if it's politically convenient, that our word doesn't mean what it used to mean. That's a huge problem, not just because it's embarrassing. It's a problem because international relationships are built on trust, and once you lose that trust, it takes decades to rebuild it. Our allies are watching this and thinking, can we count on America? Will they have our back when it matters? Or will they cut a deal that throws us under the bus? Those are questions that shouldn't even be asked about the United States. But here we are.
Meanwhile, the Trump campaign is resorting to increasingly desperate fundraising tactics. I'm talking fake confidential emails, melodramatic pleas, non-stop requests for cash. They're sending out messages that say things like, "Final notice," and "Urgent. President Trump needs you," and "We noticed you haven't donated." It's like watching a telemarketing scam, except it's a political campaign. The desperation is palpable. They're throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks. And what that tells me is, they're running out of steam. They're running out of money. They're running out of momentum.
Trump tries to sell the image of a prosperous nation, a strong leader, a movement that's unstoppable. But the reality is falling apart at the seams. The base is eroding. The policies are failing. The rhetoric is getting more extreme, because extreme is all he has left. When you can't point to accomplishments, you point to enemies. When you can't deliver results, you deliver rage. And for a while that works, but eventually rage gets exhausted. Eventually people want something real, something tangible, something that actually improves their lives. What we witnessed in Trump's return to Washington wasn't strength. It was collapse in disguise. It's a movement that survives on fantasy, not reality. The absurd praise for fake awards, the racist rhetoric designed to distract, the economic fiction that contradicts what people are living through, the rural revolt from his core supporters, everything points to a leader who's disconnected from reality and a base that's starting to realize it. Here's what I think is happening, and you tell me if I'm wrong. I think we're watching the slow-motion implosion of a political movement that was always built on sand. It was always more about personality than policy, more about grievance than governance, more about performance than results. And for a while, that was enough. The energy, the rallies, the US versus them mentality, it carried Trump to the White House and kept him relevant even after he lost in 2020. But movements built on personality cults don't last. They can't last because eventually the personality isn't enough. Eventually people want their lives to get better. They want jobs, affordable health care, good schools, safe communities. They want a government that works for them, not a reality show that entertains them. And when the personality cult can't deliver those things, when the rhetoric doesn't match the reality, people start walking away. Slowly at first, then faster. That's where we are right now. The cracks are showing. The foundation is crumbling. Trump is still putting on the show, still doing the rallies, still saying outrageous things to get attention. But it's different now. It's desperate now. He's not leading from strength. He's scrambling to hold on to what he's got. And his allies know it, which is why they're overcompensating with ridiculous praise and invented awards. They're trying to prop up a facade that's already collapsing. The question isn't whether MAGA is on its last legs. The question is, what comes next? What fills the vacuum when this movement finally burns out? Do we return to some form of normalcy, or does something even more extreme take its place? Do the people who feel betrayed by Trump's broken promises turn to traditional politics, or do they double down on extremism? And those are the questions that keep me up at night, because here's the thing. Trump didn't create the anger and frustration that fuels MAGA. He just tapped into it. He gave it a voice and a target. But the underlying issues that made people angry in the first place, economic inequality, cultural displacement, feeling left behind by a changing world, those haven't gone away. Those feelings are real, and they're not going to disappear just because Trump's movement collapses. So what we need to be thinking about is how we address those underlying issues in a constructive way. How do we create an economy that works for everyone, not just the wealthy? How do we help communities that feel abandoned? How do we bridge the cultural divides that have turned neighbors into enemies? Those are hard questions without easy answers, but they're the questions we need to be asking if we want to prevent the next demagogue from filling Trump's shoes.
Right now, though, we're watching the endgame of Trump's political career play out in real time. The desperate speeches, the manufactured enthusiasm, the increasingly unhinged rhetoric. These are the signs of a movement in its death throes. It might take months or even years to fully collapse, but the trajectory is clear. And when it does finally fall apart, the people who hitched their wagons to Trump's star are going to have some serious explaining to do. Republican congressmen who invented fake awards, who looked the other way at racist rhetoric, who sacrificed their integrity for political survival. They're going to have to answer for it. The question is whether voters will hold them accountable, or whether they'll memory hole the whole thing and pretend it never happened.
History is watching, and history doesn't forget. The choices people make in moments like this define their legacy, and a lot of folks are going to be remembered for choosing cowardice over courage, lies over truth, power over principle. So yeah, I think MAGA is on its last legs. I think what we're witnessing is the end of something. But the end of one thing is always the beginning of another. And we better be thinking real hard about what comes next. Because if we don't learn from this moment, if we don't address the fundamental issues that allowed someone like Trump to rise to power in the first place, we're just going to end up right back here in a few years, with a different face, but the same problems.
That's what I'm watching. That's what I'm thinking about. And I want to know what you think. Is MAGA collapsing, or is this just another rough patch? Are we seeing the end of Trump's influence, or is he going to bounce back like he always seems to? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because believe me, I read every single one. You're part of this conversation, part of this family here at Alpacino Reports, and your voice matters. So let me hear it.